So let's welcome in the publisher of Detroit Lions on Sports Illustrated.
Oh,
very good friend of the show, very good at what he does, a podcast legend, as many would refer to him. Mr. John Maakaron. John, how are we doing?
The Doc.
It's a beautiful Wednesday. I didn't blow away in the storm. Hopefully everybody's surviving. What's going on? I was recording a podcast in Sterling Heights, and I might release it. And all of a sudden, I have two phones and two alarms start going off. It was wild for about 10 minutes, and we had to restart it. It was crazy. First time ever recording a podcast, dang near tornado. And then there's some Facebook posts about 13 Mile and Groesbeck. Got a little twister action. So hopefully everybody's safe, having a good time, and drink up, ask away. Let's have a good chat, boys. What's going on? What are we talking about?
Well, Doc, I would love to start us off here. By the way, the tornado stuff, apparently it's going to hit us again. There's already a thunderstorm coming, so hopefully none of the internet goes out. But, Doc, before it goes out, let me ask you, Brad Holmes. We got to hear from him. All right. He joined the Greenlight Pod with Chris Long and had some very interesting things to say, which I know you covered, we covered, and he spoke on a lot of the things that Lions fans have been talking about, one of them being basically the edge position. And I want to get your thoughts on what he said about the D-line. I know people can read your thoughts, but when you hear Brad Holmes kind of not acknowledge the Zadarius Smith question, which I know we kind of talked about it. We don't think it's as big of a deal as maybe others think. But what do you think of Brad's response to the D-line and how he kind of talked about the importance of the guys in the middle and how he's kind of confident with what they got?
Yeah, no doubt. And I was at the Tigers game yesterday enjoying the Javi Baez resurgence. And then I found out he was on another podcast. I messaged Christian. I said, please don't tell me this was just released. He's like, yeah, the half hour ago they released it. I'm like, my goodness, 2 podcasts in the same week. But this one was more with Field Yates, and ESPN was more about his story, which we kind of know about, but you get a little bit more detail. So a lot of Brad Holmes this week. And yeah, I think the comment that, and it was a great question by Chris Long. And he was like, all right, tell me a little bit about your, defensive end position. And Brad Holmes, and look, guys, I think it's pretty fair. It's pretty safe to assume it's a negotiating thing where you're not going to really puff up a guy that's not on your roster at the expense of guys that are on your roster. He knows that if he mentions it, the agent's going to be like, oh, so you really like Zadarius, huh? That's another $250,000. That's another, a couple million per sack in the total contract. So I thought that, and also too, guys, pay attention to what he said with Field Yates and what his history is. He came up as a journalism PR guy. So he's trying to spin things positive regarding his defensive line. Wouldn't it be great though, if he just came out and said, maybe I think some of the fans are right. Maybe I made a mistake with Marcus Davenport. Maybe I overspent. Maybe I made a mistake with how I built this defensive line. You think he would ever come out and ever say that publicly? So he talked about the strengths of the team, but I thought the best nugget was that he values the interior of the defensive line, maybe even more than the edges, that's where you stuff the run. That's where you can get pressure up the middle. That's where you can open things up potentially with certain blocking schemes that the defensive ends can shine and eat more. So it was a great talk. I valued it very much, but it doesn't mean that the doors close on Zadarius Smith. But I do think the desperation, it feels like from the fan base, grows every single day. It's good. I think you should want the Lions to be active in their roster decisions when you see the Ravens pick up Jair Alexander for cheap, and the Lions have a clear need still, I think, at defensive end, and they could go out quickly and sign Zadarius Smith. But again, we've talked about it. Zadarius is chilling out, having a good time, waiting for the best situation for him. So Brad Holmes, look, there still is a lot to like about the defensive ends and the defensive line. A lot of pressures, still room to grow. I think Levi Onwuzurike on a prove-it deal will showcase his best brand of football to try and get a new deal. There's still some destructive force in that defensive line, and I can't wait to see it. I think it's going to get untapped this year with Casey Rogers. That defensive line is going to try to hurt some people. They always say they portray themselves as being violent and nasty. Hopefully this year they're a little bit more in terms of finishing and hitting the quarterback. Definitely good at getting pressures and disrupting the quarterback. Now it's time for that one last piece. Sack the darn quarterback.
I've interrupted the video to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, Comer & Cross, and their one-day installation for concrete floor coatings, garages, basements, patios. They do it all. And I'm sure you're tired of staring at your crack-stained garage floor. Well, I have the answer for you. Comer & Cross in their summer installation sale, they're offering 12 months same as cash or $500 in savings. Why put it off? You could contact the number 248-834-3488. They transform patios, pool decks, basements, even driveways. They do it all. And the best part is they move the stuff out for you. They repair your cracks and pits before applying your stunning new floor, guaranteed. Comer and Cross concrete floors never chip, crack, or peel like epoxy or paint. Again, you could call the number 248-834-3488, or you can book your free estimate at comercross.com. Let's get back to the video.
Yeah, Doc, I just want to stick with the Green Light podcast that Brad was on with Chris Long. One thing I took away from it, and I'm sure you heard it, and I don't know, I want to get your thoughts on what you felt about it, but we've heard a lot about these coordinators from Dan and a lot of different people. It felt like it was the first time we really heard about the confidence level of Johnny Morton and Kelvin Shepherd from Brad Holmes. And if I'm being honest with you, it felt like out of all the people who spoke about the transition from, the new OC, new DC, it gave me a little bit, I don't know, maybe it's just me, Doc, but it gave me a little bit like, okay, I trust this a little bit more. Maybe it's because Brad's so good at talking to the public. That's why he's the GM. What did you take away from that? Because he broke it down very well with John Morton kind of being here. Obviously, we all knew this with Jared. But just the fact that he broke down how they're going to stay the same, and then Calvin Shepherd, how they've essentially just been grooming him since 2022 or whenever that was to be the DC. Did you take anything more away from that, or is it kind of just the same thing? Am I crazy for hearing that and being a little bit more confident?
So I got a question, Booner. When Brad Holmes talks, do you pull up the computer real close and just listen to every word and be like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever, and just get all excited and get all...
I break it down, Doc. I listen closely.
Good. No, that's good. No,
they seem confident. I mean, we're getting confirmation from everyone in the building. Sometimes, even if there's bad people, I know they're supposed to be solid, but you've been in the room. They're pretty honest all the time. Hey, we're still working on this. We're still trying to figure this out. There's been none of that with these guys. We've heard that with players, with coaches. They fired coaches. This has been like a seamless transition, and a lot of people are saying that it's not going to be.
But remember, too, that Dan Campbell was pretty complimentary and valued what Anthony Lynn brought to the table, but yanked the play calling duties, which was the signal he was not happy. So remember, when you hear these guys speak on a podcast, they definitely want to spin it in a positive way. He's not going to say, oh, I have concerns that John Morton is going to call too many pass plays or is going to struggle. He's going to highlight the strengths. That's the key thing, is to instill confidence in the fan base that everything is okay. And of course, Brad Holmes is going to do that. He's a master at it. He's done it now for several years and has learned from Les Snead. He's not going to instill panic. Was he panicking when the team had all those injuries? No, he went out and tried to find help at other teams' practice squads. So Brad Holmes is not going to panic. And I think the biggest reason that fans should initially have trust in John Morton and Kelvin Shepherd, but be cautiously optimistic, is that Dan Campbell picked them. Brad, of course, is going to sign off on it, but Dan Campbell made these decisions. Dan Campbell went out there and said early on, hey, Aaron, make sure Kelvin Shepherd is groomed up and make sure he's ready for that position. That was a seamless transition. I would expect the defense to grow upon the concepts that Glenn first put in, and now Kelvin Shepherd's going to tweak it. So it's going to be great, because you did start to see a little bit of mix and matching along the defensive front and being a little bit more creative. So that's, I think, what's going to be great, is that Kelvin Shepherd's a former linebacker and Aaron Glenn was a defensive back. That's why you saw some of those exotic blitzes from the safeties. So you look at it and you say, all right, Dan Campbell, John Morton, they understand clearly the work that John Morton did with Sean Payton. Definitely, clearly an opportunity to learn more behind the scenes and things like that. So Morton's experience, I think the thing that you're going to want to pay attention to is, how does he set up plays? How does his play calling evolve? How does he set up defenses? So those are natural question marks. But again, like the doc said in previous interviews, when you have that level of talent, it's just a great opportunity for John Morton. Do you think he's going to really mess up Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs, and a veteran quarterback? Now, there's going to be some wrinkles and some things that maybe will come up, like red zone efficiency and certain calls on 3rd and short, or how much the average depth of passes for Jared Goff early in the year. There's going to be some things that come up, but the talent level, John Morton should send Brad Holmes a Christmas card. This is the opportunity I get as an offensive coordinator to work with this. Thank you. Because with this level of talent, you might expect John Morton to start maybe hearing his name as the future head coach, based on the level of success that they could have Now, he said to the media and right to our face, he doesn't really have, I don't think, those aspirations. He definitely wants to be the best offensive play caller that he can be. And I think that this situation, being that he's a hometown guy, gives him the best chance to succeed. So I never really had that national doubt that people would have from the outside, because you see the level of talent that this football team has. So I would not say that the reason for concern is not the change so much in coaches. Yeah, you lost Antoine Randall, you lost Tanner Engstrand, you lost a couple assistants as well that were here. But trust me, guys, Dan Campbell has his finger on the pulse of exactly who to bring in. You guys are hearing it. Chassard Choice is the real deal. He's going to get a lot out of these running backs. Scotty Montgomery, a future NFL potential head coach or coordinator, is going to really take advantage of the chance to work with the wide receivers. I think the coaching staff is great, is elite, and should give this fan base a lot of excitement.
And Doc, something that kind of goes perfectly into that, I don't know if it was last week that he talked about it. We saw it this week, was Peter Schrager when he was on ESPN. He talked about how important Jared Goff is for this Detroit Lions team and said that he's the most important player in the NFC in general, just because all the factors going around. Do you agree with that statement? If not, who would you put above Jared Goff?
Yeah, no doubt. It's a great question. Listen, I think no better analyst around than Peter Schrager has got his pulse. To quickly answer Matt's question in the chat, Tanner's the offensive coordinator of the Jets. And that might be a talking point if the offense stumbles. Oh, should you have kept the understudy of Ben Johnson? But he got an opportunity right away to be the OC for Aaron Glenn. So Aaron stole from the Detroit Lions, but a great opportunity for Engstrand. I'm curious to see how he does with that offense. So I look at it and I say, Jared Goff, the great old debate about the quarterbacks, right? And I look at it and I say, very important, one of the most key figures in the National Football League in terms of, hey, you got to captain the ship. You've taken on the task. You've said you want more responsibility. You want to be able to have opportunities to check into other calls if you see fit, have the opportunity even maybe to walk up to the line of scrimmage with 3-4 plays that you like. And I do think that Jared Goff is amongst the top important players in the NFC. You look at it, though, I don't think that he's probably, the most important. I think if Saquon Barkley goes down for the Eagles, they might be done. That was a team that was driven by that running game that opened things up for the passing game. Brown and, the wide receivers there are solid, but Saquon Barkley was a league MVP, and he's just one of those dudes that just can light things up. So he's in that conversation. Brock Purdy is also important for the 49ers. If he goes down, I think that thing collapses to be like a 3-win team. So, I don't want to see I don't want to see Jared Goff go down to see how valuable he is. I don't trust the backups right now on the roster. I think Jared Goff is very valuable, among the top 3-4 most valuable. And you can make the argument, the most important player on the Detroit Lions roster. If he has a good season, guys, you can legitimately talk about 11, 12, 13 wins and legitimately Super Bowl, because he can, distribute the football well. Scans defense is great. I think he's a great leader. And what's something that's underrated too, when he turned the ball over, that there were times he made bad plays, bad throws, bad games, but he always came back and would lead the team on a drive. And you never really felt like the team was really out of it last year. And when you have all those defensive injuries, that's a lot of pressure on your offense. And Jared Goff and that offense lived up to the billing. So you get credit for 15 wins. Now, you also got to take the blame when you have your worst game of the year against the Commanders when they needed you to step up. But that offensive line, it was a complete collapse offensively in early on that just took the Lions out of rhythm and gave the Commanders so much momentum that they felt like they could roll in and play at a high level. So Jared Goff's important, and that's why you pay the guy north of $45 million a year, and you make him at the time one of the top 5 quarterbacks. And when you pay the guy that much, to whom much is given, much is expected, and I expect a lot from Jared Goff.
John, you wrote an article about a player that I got some flack for, talking about pressure, or, a player that I think will be under a lot of pressure, and that is Terrion Arnold. Can you kind of share your thoughts on that? Just kind of the microscope he's under, because there's many people that would push back on that take of mine and say, well, Jeff, he's cornerback 2. My thing is he's a first-round pick, and he plays a position where, we would give him grace for 1 year. Or usually cornerback's the hardest position besides quarterback to play, so you're willing to give the guy another year. But I think in this year, if he's struggling, then we have to have a serious conversation. Am I crazy for that? And where do you land on that?
Yeah, you really can make that argument for any player in the National Football League. You're only one bad season away from the team looking to draft your replacement. So I do understand that, national analysts and people that write stories, when they talk about who could potentially be a bust, they include Terrion Arnold, but I don't think he's going to be a bust. I don't think it's too soon. The cornerback position in the National Football League takes 2 or 3 years to develop. You got to see so many things. And yeah, they got to correct all those pass interference calls, but he did steadily get better. Like, he was thrown into the fire playing the most press man coverage of any rookie. And so that experience is invaluable. Working with Aaron Glenn is invaluable. So the pressure's on. Yeah, because it's a money position. You were a first round pick. And that's what players should want. Terrion Arnold should want to go in and say, hey, no, don't let him meet guard Justin Jefferson. I want him. I want to be able to be the guy that helps our team win. So Terrion doesn't shy away from that. He doesn't shy away from the scrutiny that comes with that position. Look, me personally, I always tell friends don't let friends play that position. You should play wide receiver. You get all the credit. You get to dance in the end zone. Cornerbacks, you get 3 pass breakups and you give up 1 40-yard bomb, you're a bust. And so it's just a position that's skewed so heavily that the term, we get spoiled. Go back and watch Revis Island. Go back and watch Dion. There's so few of them that are available to do that. There's so few guys that are true lockdown corners, but it doesn't mean you don't go and strive for that. But it's so tough nowadays when the league is making it so that you can't breathe on these receivers. But for Terrion Arnold working against J-Mo, Amon-Ra, you think there's a cornerback ready, more prepared to play the position than Terrion Arnold? I mean, he goes up against the top dogs, and now he's going to get a chance to go up against Tim Patrick, Tesla, Khalif Raymond, and mix and match and compete. That guy's going to develop. He's got that grit mentality. I just think that, he's going to be under the microscope. He'll handle it well. But yeah, if he doesn't, then, you're going to look to potentially, and maybe having DJ Reed will be that nice, having a young player with a veteran is always good to bounce ideas off of, to learn from, and to have a group. That's a good cornerback room with Amik Robertson and the guys in that room. So I expect Terrion to ball out this year, and he'll be in the conversation for having a bounce back year. No doubt about it. I think that him and DJ Reed will get the good Doc karma and get their first interceptions in a while.
And I love to hear that, Doc. That pumps me up. I want to ask you the other side of the ball. We've talked to you a couple months or a couple weeks ago about this player. I want to kind of get your thoughts process again, a little update. The last time you saw him out at camp, because I think you actually put a report out there. So I want not a report, but you kind of observed what you saw. Hendon Hooker, though, as the backup quarterback. This whole battle with Hendon Hooker, can you tell us your thoughts on this, what you saw when you were out there at the mini camp, and expectations going into this year? Do you see this being a situation to where Hendon Hooker is a potential candidate to be let go from this team going into this offseason?
Yeah, I did an opinion piece as well at Detroit Lions on SI. And my opinion was, I wouldn't be surprised if they, similar to 2022, when I watched the whole training camp and Brad Holmes whacked both backup quarterbacks, Tim Boyle and David Blau, gone. And they went with Sudfeld and brought in others to try and take that job. So look, Hendon Hooker, you'll read it everywhere. So I always look to read to make sure I'm not overly critical, because I have high standards. I think these players are the best of the best. So I want to see something. So like I said in previous interviews here, this is what I saw. Last year and the year before, I saw a quarterback that held on to the ball too long, tentative, not accurate, and somebody that didn't look like he was ready to be there. So we go to OTAs, and I see a quarterback that's tentative, holding on to the ball too long, not connecting with the receivers. Didn't look like anything different. Now, it's early, but all I can do is surmise what I saw. So I shared just like everybody else. So you can't call me a hater, because everybody said the same thing. It was not to the standard of anything that would impress anybody that's watching it. And Kyle Allen, the same thing. Ahmed Hassani would have took his head off, and they were getting the Kelvin Shepard did not call off the dogs. He was sending the guys, and he was trying to confuse those backup quarterbacks, and they didn't look great. They looked out of sorts. It looked like a rough practice. So my expectation is I need to see some progression. I need to see some what you would expect from a backup. Get your targets, let go of the football, scan the field, get in and out of plays, what Dan Campbell talks about all the time. Look like somebody that, hey, if you're given an opportunity to just stabilize the ship. What I saw looked like he went in and poked 5-6 more holes in the ship and sunk the boat, is what I saw. But that's just one practice. It's OTAs. He's not working with the best of the best. and it's early, but that's all I can report on. And so my opinion was, look, you got guys out there in an NFL world, not for long. And a guy like me, who's not particularly like super loyal to any player, if I'm just like a GM. I told you guys, I view it like a GM. Flacco's out there. He could get cut. You get guys out there that's a veteran. If you get a guy out there that's cut, that's a little bit better, I would pass on Will Levis. I don't think that's a trade you ever make. You're not going to trade for Shedeur Sanders. He will never be available. But if Flacco and other quarterbacks become available, I would take a look. If Hendon Hooker,
get him.
He's got to showcase something. He's got to go out there and show us something. And I hope this preseason, July 31st, is a great chance. Go up there against a talented Chargers team and get out there and handle business. Show something that a lot of reporters can see. And hopefully that he'll shut everybody up and start to look like a backup quarterback. Show some progression.
Well, Doc, we got a lot of we talked about him actually in a video yesterday, and the amount of comments on that video calling us idiots for that take. Like, and even me, who's been very supportive, but then we kind of
what's their answer? They have no facts other than I love to support Hendon Hooker. Listen, guys, listen. That's a good take then, because if people are pushing back, I get their support. Well, he's a backup and he's going to hold the clipboard, but you got to still, when you're out there and you got a job to do, again, remember, I know it's not an indication, but it's an indication. The team had you train all year last year. And when the coach said, man, we're going into the playoffs, what do? Do we go to Hendon? No. Do we go to a guy that's sitting on the bench there and coaching? Yeah, I like that much better. What does that tell you? That's a clear proof. What do you mean? Oh, that was always in the plan. Yeah, if that's always in the plan and I'm Hendon Hooker, I'm pissed off. Like, I walk in there and go, what do you mean? I'm not ready? No, you're not ready. That's why we're going to Teddy. We like him more than you. I would be offended. I'd be pissed. And I would have came back this year. And every time that I had a chance to show something, I'm going to show that Teddy Bridgewater's name will never be brought up again in my presence. So he's got a lot of work to do. I think he'll get to that point. And it's not to say he's a bust, but guys, it's not just me saying it. Everybody saw it. They said they were underwhelmed. They weren't thrilled with what they saw. They saw the exact same thing that they saw last year. And so in the NFL, you gotta take strides forward. You gotta show something. Otherwise, don't be surprised if Brad Holmes, because he's done it once, if you go through camp and you're not that great, he will cut you.
And Doc, you bring it up. You're not loyal to players. You think like a GM. If Alim McNeill goes out there this year, after he's back to 100%, I'm saying, because obviously he's going to come back, need to get some rehabilitation during the games as far as like getting back to game speed. And he does not look like a top 10 defensive tackle. When do you start to be like kind of planting the red flags of this might have been a big mistake re-signing Alim McNeill at the time that they did?
Yeah, look, you got to remember too that Brad Holmes definitely look. You got to look at the value of what he brought to the table prior to the injury. I thought that he was not going to be a guy that's going to record a lot of sacks, but I thought that he held it down in terms of the run game. And Brad Holmes said it. He said, "I value the interior of the defensive line quite a bit." So those 3 techs and the guys, the nose tackle, the defensive tackle, those guys are pretty key. And those guys that man along the defensive ends are very key for Brad Holmes. It's a focal point. And so, look, this year's a wash. He hurt himself. So, unfortunately, the contract's been paid. You got to do what you got to do with it. You hope that next year you get the full force along with the Tyleik Williams and the young guys there that are developing. So I think Alim McNeill's a good player, solid role player. I thought he brought a physical presence that was definitely warranted. And I don't think it was, all that terrible to reward Alim McNeill for the work that he did in that defensive line. And I think that he'll start to showcase, look, if you know his attitude and his grit mentality, he'll come back strong. He'll be serviceable this year, but you'll look to come back next year. And to the point about me snapping, I'm reacting to those that, look, you 3 are guys that are reading everything and sharing true knowledge. When people push back, it's just being true fans, which are, hey, we support the players and we'll give them unlimited leeway. I mean, some people on air this week were like, when we're debating Stafford and Goff, Stafford has a ring and Goff doesn't. People are like, no, Jared Goff's my guy. He's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Well, you're comparing Goff to the terrible other quarterbacks that you saw, and he got 2 playoff wins, so you anoint him. But to me, He's still in the category that Stafford was, 0 rings. So it's all about your perspective. Fans, I know they want the players to like them. But in the end, I tell you directly, I view it like a GM. If I smell anything better, I'm out. I want someone better, period. I want the best 53 guys, period. And if you got to cut people, you got to let them go. That's the nature of the business. And that's Brad Holmes' job, is to find the best players. And it's cutthroat. It stinks. It's the business part. But I respect the players that go out there. But if I think that there's a better quarterback out there, I'm on it just like that. That's what I want. I want the best players. And here today, gone tomorrow. That's the National Football League. And that's how I've always viewed it, is what do you do for the team? How do you help? Great. If you can't help anymore and there's someone better, bring them here. And that's why the fans are so great. And that's why this fan base is the best, is because they think that there's a better player out there than Marcus Davenport. This team's got to go out there and prove that we're all wrong.
Doc, you put out an article, but it was I got to credit to Easy and spending that Allen Robinson on, and he was a great guest. I've been trying to get him. He's hard to contact. I got to hit up Easy on to contact this man. But he spoke about the Super Bowl run, or the loss that many expected to be a Super Bowl run. Obviously, the injuries impacted that a lot. What did you think of his take? Because I saw that Commanders Twitter shared it, and they ate it up, and they, Lions fans, Commanders fans are arguing about what would have happened, hypotheticals. Where do you stand on that hypothetical scenario? Do you think it was a matter of injuries, or do you think there was maybe other things? Because people were quick to bring up the Jared Goff performance as well, factoring into that.
Yeah, no, it's a great debate. What would have happened? And Allen Robinson set the wick on fire, and it was like, we would have won it. Of course he would think that. I think the Eagles game would have been legendary. It would have been great. Down to the wire, hard fought. You would have seen Saquon do some things. You would have seen the Lions do some things, punching a puncher's chance, had they been healthy. And probably you give the edge to the Lions if they were fully healthy. But that's the way football goes. And yeah, it was good to hear Allen admit that, hey, injuries definitely caught up to us. And, the Commanders took the momentum quickly in that game, and they found a way to get after Jared Goff, and they took advantage of the weaknesses. And guess what? Dan Quinn's a legend. Like, I love Dan Quinn. I think that he's a superior defensive mind, and the offensive weapons with their offensive coordinator there was just spectacular. Took advantage of the skills that they had, and they were the better team on that day. And so I looked at it and I said, all right, this Lions team, that's why they're running it back again this year, is that they feel like the talent with Aiden Hutchinson coming back healthy, a couple tweaks, development of the guys on the roster should give them a chance. I still don't think that they're the best NFL team. I still think that I've been saying it all week. I think the next step for Lions fandom is to taste a Super Bowl loss, and maybe this year, maybe next year. But I think that's the next evolution of what fans got to go through. We got to go through the full heartbreak. We got to go through the hype, all the features, everything, and then experience a loss. And then I think that'll make it so that when they win, it'll just taste that much sweeter after having a defeat. Listen, winning a Super Bowl would be great. I definitely would not be opposed to going right there and winning it right now this year and ending the suffering. But if on the other side that you're going to get a Super Bowl win, I'd rather have the loss, because that's just going to make it taste that much sweeter when it eventually happens. Because guess what? I've lived it. Man, did it hurt when San Jose would beat the Red Wings and Toronto would beat the Red Wings, and then they get to the finals and lost. You know how much that hurt to see them get destroyed by the New Jersey Devils? That hurt deeply. And to see all our guys devastated. And then when Steve Eisman finally got to raise the cup on the day I graduated high school at a graduation party, it was great. Gratiot Avenue in East Point was lit up from 8 Mile to 17 Mile. It was great. It was an all-night party. And I feel like the joy that we felt was because of all the years of heartache that the Wings gave us, having to go through that struggle. So I like the struggle bus just a little bit, but this football team is built pretty well. But there are certain holes at certain spots, and now you got to count on some young guys at the guard position. That's always going to be key. So we'll see. But for the Commanders fans, let them chirp a little bit. They got the win, and then they beat us. They whipped our ass in the UFL championship game. Shut up, all the UFL fans. All 14 of you had to watch. I'll be honest, I watched maybe 14 whole minutes in the whole season. That's just not my brand of football to watch. But hey, when you get to the championship game, you don't lay a defensive egg. And Commanders, right now, DC holds a little bit over us.
Doug, I want to throw this out there because the Lions did release the training camp dates for the public just the other day. It made me start thinking, and we actually had this conversation, Klotz and I, we did the show last week. And we talked about players potentially on the cut line. Who are a couple guys? And I had brought up, and I think we actually talked about this a while back with you. It might have been a little earlier on going into minicamp. Is there any surprise, like outside of like maybe the known players that we know are on that line? Is there any surprise players that you could see getting cut here for the 53-man roster?
You know, the guys we've talked about, you know, maybe Khalif Raymond, veterans, guys that, you know, are competing. You look at it and you say, okay, along the offensive line, Colby Sorsdahl, Coyote Awosika, Dan Skipper might be a fan favorite, but you know, his job, you know, status is always going to be up in question. He's always kind of along that cut line, even though he's definitely more popular. You know, he's a guy that he's just got to battle. You always look at the linebackers. You look at Trevor Nowaski. We're doing a series on the bubble players. I'm having Christian Vito.
Trevor will not be cut.
Trevor will not be cut. Yeah, he's a good player. I like his special teams value. But linebacker position, you realize there's good competition there along the way. And when Malcolm Rodriguez comes back, you know, you realize Cunningham's there. Hopefully Ancelotti's there. It'll provide some competition at that spot. And you also got to look at the young guy there that they brought in last year. I felt like Ezekiel Turner was a guy that I thought could have a chance based on their special teams play. So it's going to be always interesting to see the competition levels. You know, everyone loves seeing Tom Kennedy out there and competing. I wonder one year if he surprises and actually makes the team. I'm looking forward to the one guy though that the two guys that their spot's not as guaranteed as many people think is Dan Jackson and Lovett. There's a lot of competition at safety, and there's basically one spot for Dan Jackson. I think he'll have the edge going into camp, but he's got to earn his spot. And Lovett, that room is full. This might be the year that, you know, typically the Lions carry the guys that they draft. This might be the year that they turn that around, and maybe a couple guys that got drafted don't make the team.
And Doc, when you're looking at this, kind of going with the safety room, if you had to pick that guy that's going to be behind Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph, and maybe I don't even talk about like during week one, when it really matters, like playoff time. We saw a situation where, Maurice Norris had to be out there in an emergency situation against the Commanders. Who do you think will pick up that role? Because you did bring up Ezekiel Turner, and then not Ezekiel Turner, Lawrence Strickland. You brought up Dan Jackson, guys like that. But you even see guys that they're bringing out. Can't remember the name out of, I believe it was Grand Valley State. You see that they're adding depth, even Avonte Maddox. Who's going to be that third guy, if you had to guess, come season end?
Yeah, come season, it's going to be Avonte Maddox. I think his veteran presence, he showed out a little bit. I thought he acclimated well, looked comfortable. The player you're talking about is Kennelly. I think he's going to have a chance for a strong training camp. But yeah, the coaching staff wants him to battle it out. And that safety spot is open for that one spot to take. And I think it's Branch, Kirby Joseph, Avonte Maddox, and you get another guy there for depth. And it'll be interesting to see who wins it. Probably Dan Jackson has the leg up in regards to opportunities and the competitiveness. But again, here's the key. And this year might be the year, because typically, you know, in training camps, you guys know there's offensive periods, and then there's defensive periods, and then there's break time, as I call it, or as others that are hardcore, there's the special teams period. I don't watch it all that much. It doesn't interest me greatly other than the kicks. A lot of, you know, beat writers, they just love everything. They love the special teams. Like, great. Congratulations. Jack Fox is kicking the ball freshly in a new way. It does nothing to the, you know, big time readership. You know what I mean? If you guys noticed, in 7 years, I barely write about special teams. It's not missed. You know what I mean? I write about it in terms of some interesting things that Dave Phipp talks about, but maybe this year I will pay attention during those special teams drill, you know, because in those intent practices, you're writing down basically everything. And so those little 12-minute breaks where they're just, you know, kicking the ball and having a couple guys catch. It's always good to see, J-Mo's out there catching balls and all that kind of fun stuff. It's always intriguing. It's always a little bit of nugget, but it just doesn't keep my attention as opposed to offensive line drills, defensive line drills, competitive periods. So maybe this year, maybe the Lions will entice me to focus on special teams and write about it a little bit more with Jackson. But, you know, for me, I enjoy it. It's like a 10-minute little break as Jack Fox. Listen, it's not hard to report. Jack Fox is great. He always looks great. And the guys that are receiving, you know, they always do great. And we can't really divulge the complete list anyway, because that's a strategy. So it gives us an opportunity. And that drill is always so slow that it gives us a chance to kind of recap and insert in our head what we just wrote down, because a lot of times it's just a bunch of scribbles, numbers, and plays and formations and things that you want to start to organize for your reports.
Hey, Doc, we talk a lot about the defense. Obviously, we need this defense to be very good. And Kelvin, I think we can all pretty much agree. Most of us are confident in. I like Kelvin a lot. I think he's going to bring a different dynamic to this defense. But the thing that the Aaron Glenn defense kind of held they took pride in, and you guys talked about this, you and Christian on the Lone Wolves podcast, is how aggressive they play defensively. Can you kind of talk about, and that was in the article, you talked about the areas of concerns. Can you kind of expand on that? Just how much you agree with Christian, and if you think Calvin may, and it's hard to say now, but just in your opinion, how much different this defense could look, or do you think Calvin will probably take a lot of what AG kind of did already, including that aggressive man-to-man type of defense?
Of course, there are opportunities to do some things differently, and you saw a little bit of it at OTAs where you bring a five-man front. You have the pressure coming from the Sam linebacker spot as opposed to maybe the defensive backs. So the linebacker spots can be definitely more key in this defense. I do think there'll be more matchup-based situations and maybe trying a little bit more avenues of success. DJ Reed definitely can succeed at man, but also had some success at zone as well. So I expect a lot more flexibility and matchup based, but the Lions typically, when you look at it, they tend to really play to their strengths, which is really, they want to be run stuffers. They want to get after the quarterback. And what was the staple of that defense is it was really, truly, if you guys really watched that team last year, it truly was a bend, don't break. They would allow some certain yards at certain points, but once that team started to sniff the red zone around that 30, that defense clamped down. And they kept teams out of the end zone. And it was awesome to see. I think they can get better at forcing more turnovers. I think they can get better at actually getting home and sacking the quarterback. There are numbers that they can definitely get better at in terms of, hey, they saw a big dip in giving up chunk yards running when Alex Anzalone wasn't there. That the defensive intensity was not there. So I do think that Kelvin Shepherd is going to have room to grow. And that's why you saw. I do think that Tyleik Williams will be a nice addition. Mekhi Wingo, you need to develop. I want to see how Ennis Rakestraw and Terrion Arnold develop with Deshae Townsend and working again with Amik Robertson. So there's a lot of room for growth in this defense. And then if those linebackers come through and are sure tacklers, and you get Brian Branch to kind of ease up on some of those loose defensive penalties and those unsportsmanlike calls, you got the makings of a defense that can be top five. No, I would not be surprised in any capacity if this defense comes out and is very stout and very aggressive and is able to have success. If this can be a top 10, top 5 defense, if everything stays right. And you got to remember, Aiden's back. So let's go. Let's push the 15 sack Aiden Hutchinson. Let's get him up there and let him dominate, let him cook, and let's see what happens.
Hey, what's going on there? It's Jeff Iafrate. Appreciate you for finishing the video. You can check out one of the videos here suggested or show support by commenting, liking, and subscribing. And buy your merchandise, officialctsports.com.